Hello people of YouTube, it's Deepak here, and welcome to DCS World 2.9.12 and Eagle Dynamics AH-64D Apache module. Welcome to Tutorial 5, Navigation. Today we're going to cover the basics of navigation in the Apache, both using the TADS and also the ADF. And the basics of navigation in the Apache are that you have these two IGI units. These are blended GPS INS navigational units, and they read from a database of 149 points, which are loaded via DTC. We don't currently have DTC modelled in the sim, however it is intended that will be modelled in the future. For now, we get our points from the mission editor, and all points that we load from the mission editor at present will be waypoints, and they will all be part of your first route, which is the alpha route. So these 149 points in the real aircraft, they're broken into a series of partitions. You have waypoints and hazards, which are points 1 to 50. You have control measures, which are points 51 to 99. And then you have targets and threats, which are points 100 to 149. Although in the TSD, they're renumbered T 1 to 50. And with that mentioned, all of these different point types have prefixes. So waypoints are W and then a 2-digit number, hazards are H, control measures are C, and targets or threats are T, as I previously mentioned. You also have 10 routes on board the aircraft. Only the first one is populated by the mission editor, but once you're in the cockpit, via the TSD, you can actually modify the others. If we click route at the bottom right here, it will show us the current route, which in this case is alpha. If I press the RTM button here, we'll get a list of all the routes in the aircraft, with the ability to create new ones with the new button here, or delete existing ones. We have routes referred to as Alpha, Bravo, Delta, Echo, Hotel, and if we page, India, Lima, Oscar, Romeo, Tango. And we can come out of the route page here and it will return us to the main TSD screen. Something to note, these routes are not really synonymous with flight plans that you might have in other aircraft. You should really think of them as flight plan segments, or routing segments. So in the real world, you would tend to have multiple routes that would be used as different ingresses to a target area, or even routes that you could take between different target areas, and then you might have a series of routes with defined egresses from your target areas as well. Once you're actually in a target area and prosecuting a target, you're not likely to use the routes or any kind of flight plan. You're going to move in a more kind of tactical fashion in relation to the terrain. So, let's go over the controls of the TSD. The TSD is going to be your main way that you're going to interact with navigational systems. You also have the aircraft flight page, which will show you quite a lot of useful information. And then, of course, you have the pilot's helmet-mounted display as well, which will probably be the primary reference that the pilot makes use of while flying. But the TSD is the main page where you're going to control the navigational system. So let's go over all of the controls that we have here. Of course, in the main part of the display we have the map, and we can see our currently selected route here with these numbered waypoints with lines connecting them. This C52 is a control point which was already defined in the system. At the bottom left I have my currently selected waypoint and its distance. At the bottom right I have endurance in hours and minutes. We could currently fly for 1 hour and 37 minutes estimated. We have the wind conditions, they're currently reading CAM. Anything below 5 knots is CAM, above 5 knots it will show you a direction and a speed. And we have current aircraft heading at the top. We have the commanded aircraft heading at the bottom to make our way to the currently selected waypoint. And then across the top we have the report button allows us to make use of the data link. I won't be covering that today. We have the pan control. As soon as I click pan, the display will freeze, and I can then use the cursor controls to actually slew around and basically take a look at the map and look at any points that are loaded into the system and so on. I can also jump to a particular point by clicking point here and entering it via the keyboard. We won't bother doing that just now. I can also change the pan, either cursor or normal. If I put it into normal, I can then actually use the cursor, and that would allow me to interact with symbols and other bits and bobs. So yeah, I can basically hit cursor enter to pan, but if I put it back into cursor mode, then I can simply pan using the cursor. If we click pan again, we'll return to normal. However, the display will remain frozen in the last location we panned to. If I unbox freeze here, then we'll jump back to the helicopter's present position. Show allows us to control what's shown on the display at the current time. Note that these presets are different between navigation and attack phases, and we can flip the phase using this button down here. Attack and navigational phase. We're only going to cover navigational phase today, but just consider them two presets for what is shown on the display. We can click that again to get rid of it. PP is for present position. That will display the present position block at the bottom of the screen. Very useful if you need to make some kind of a radio call to someone and let them know where you are. Coord brings up all of the points in the current database in their different partitions. So we have waypoints and hazards. These are the 6 waypoints in our current route. I can click for control measures, and here are the control measures currently in the system. We have multiple pages of these in this particular mission file. Lines and areas are not currently implemented, although they are intended to be implemented once we have DTC. They would allow us to draw lines on the map and you know, make polygons of areas and things like that, but currently not implemented. If we choose just coordinates, that gives us targets and threats by default, and if you had multiple pages, you could page through these as well. Shot will show us all of the Hellfire shots that we've made. The system automatically stores the location of each target we fire on using the Hellfire. And if we click any of these selections twice, or a second time, we return to the main TSD display. So that's Coord, and then again would take us back. Util will show us the current status of our navigational system. The only thing really that we're interested in is the alignment status of our 2 INUs. If they're showing green text with a small number or a 0, that means the system is fully aligned. We can come out of utility now. We can scale the display using the controls at the top right here. Center controls whether we're centered or decentered on our present position. Freeze, we've already kind of demonstrated, it allows us to freeze updates to the display. Cursor acquisition allows us to set an acquisition source using a point on the map and selecting it with our cursor. We're not going to cover sensors and acquisition sources today. We also have the manual acquisition source control here as well. We're not going to cover that. Point allows us to add, edit, delete, store, or transmit any points in our current database. We're going to cover that a little bit later. Route allows us to interact with the current route. We can add, delete, and set direct to points in our current route, and then the points that are in the route are shown on the right hand side here. I can use these arrows to go up and down through them. The point that is currently underlined is our current destination, and any point that is boxed is the one that we're basically reviewing right now. If I box any of these, for one thing, they show in inverse video on the TSD map, but also I get a data block at the bottom showing me its identifier, its type, its free text, estimated time en route, estimated time of arrival, distance to it in kilometers, distance to it in nautical miles. And I can click again to deselect. We can come out of that. Map allows us to adjust the map controls. This is really about presentation of the video layer behind the symbology. So currently we have a chart. If I click chart, I can switch it to other types. We have digital elevation, we have satellite imagery, and we have stick map. Stick map doesn't actually display any video at all. I'm going to go for digital elevation just now. In digital elevation, you can color band based on height. And this can be height above sea level if you choose elevation, or it can be height above the aircraft's current altitude if you choose aircraft. I'm going to leave it on elevation mode just now. You can also set contours at different kind of heights. And FFD I don't think is currently implemented, but it's supposed to allow you to see like built up areas and things like that on the map as well. You can set it to areas or lines or both or none. I'll leave it turned off just now because I don't think it's implemented. You can also change your orientation of the map here. It's pretty standard to have track up. I'm going to leave it in north up just now though. Clicking map again takes us out of that mode. BAM is for battlefield management. That allows us to create firing zones and non-firing zones. We won't cover that today. And then again, phase, we can flip between navigational and attack phases using that control. Okay, so now that we've gone over all of the controls of the TSD, let's take a little look at how we interact with the points that are in the database. So if I click Coord at the top here, you can see that we have the different categories: waypoints and hazards, control measures, targets and threats. These are all listed, and I can click on the right hand side to select any one of these and break out a data block giving us more information about that point. Again, useful if we're talking to other units and want to give information to them. I can also click on one of these points using the buttons down the left hand side to immediately set it as the acquisition source. So for example, if I was to set waypoint 3, let's imagine there's something there that we want to fire on. We click WO3, you'd see that the acquisition source has immediately switched to WO3, and on my helmet mounted display, can I actually see where that point is? I think it's over my shoulder right now. So it would actually show the dashed cross where that point was. But we're not going to do that just now. Again, we're not going to cover that kind of stuff right now. We'll switch it back to fixed, and that dashed cross is now in front of us again. And let's just get rid of the helmet mounted display for a moment. So yeah, the coordinates display allows us to set acquisition source and also display the data block. It's also kind of handy for just paging through all of these and seeing what they all are. But if we come out of this display, if we want to actually add one, let's say I'm going to create a hazard for a set of power lines that I know are close to the route that I'm going to be flying. Let's click points at the bottom right. This is how we actually interact with the points, and we have the ability here to add, edit and delete, which is pretty self-explanatory. Store would actually allow us to store a point from either a current sensor or as a flyover point, kind of synonymous to creating a mark point in something like the F-16, and transmit allows us to use the data link to send points to other aircraft. We'll cover that in a different video. So for today I want to add, so I click add. By default it's going to be a waypoint, however I can choose different types. So I've got waypoint, hazard, control measure and target or threat. I'm going to choose hazard. And then the next thing that it's going to ask us, well, what I need to do is I need to set an ident. So if I click ident here, that immediately brings the keyboard unit to life, and I need to tell it what kind of hazard this is. Now if I click abbreviations at the top here, ABR, I can see different codes that I can use to describe different types of points. Most of these are specific to the type, whether it's a waypoint or a hazard or a control point or whatever, and I can page through these to see all the different things. We of course have a lot to identify different types of target, but I want to say wires power, so that's WL is my code. I can come out of abbreviations now, I can choose ident again, and I enter WL and press enter on the keyboard unit. It's now going to prompt me for my free text. Each point can have a three character free text. In the case of this one, I'll just enter what's this point going to be? 07. H07 and press enter. It now wants the lat long in UTM format. So it's already set the prefix for me, and by default it wants an 8-digit UTM. That's 4 digits for lat, 4 digits for long. I currently already have the point I want, so I'm going to enter 970541997 and press enter. Next it's going to prompt me for the altitude. By default it's going to give me the terrain elevation, which here is 43 feet. I'm going to press enter again, and that point is now entered. And here you can see it's also used the correct symbol in this case, the symbol for power lines. You'll also see that the 07 is in inverse video. That's because it's my currently selected point. I could click point and then enter something else. Let's say we want to have waypoint 1 again. Press enter, and you'll now see that my current point is waypoint 1. So that's all set. Editing is fairly easy to achieve. First, make sure that you have your point selected. So I've selected waypoint 1. I can now click edit, and I could then reposition this point either using the keyboard unit, or alternatively I can just move my cursor to where I want it and press cursor enter, and you'll see that it immediately repositioned waypoint 1 for me. That's a very simplistic way of doing some editing. Delete works in the same way. If I press delete, it's going to ask me for confirmation yes or no. I'm going to say no right now. Let's say that I want to take out waypoint 4. So let's press point, enter W04, enter. You'll see that waypoint 4 is now my point, and its number is shown in inverse video. I can press delete. Yes, that point is now gone. So it's not only removed from the root, removing it from the root wouldn't actually remove it, but because the point is deleted from the database, it can now no longer be in the root at all. Store. Let's drop something at our current location. We can press store and then simply say now, and that's immediately dropped a waypoint at our current location. In this case, it was the next available number, which was 4, and you can see here waypoint 4. It's a waypoint, and it got the short text fly because it was a flyover point. So that's a very, very quick way of storing a location. Okay, let's come out of the points menu, and next let's take a little look at the routes. Let's say that I want to eliminate waypoint 5 from my route. Let's go into route. We can go up. We see that we've got waypoint 5 here. On the left, we've got controls for adding and deleting. Let's delete waypoint 5. It's immediately taken out of the route. You can see it still exists though. It just isn't now shown on the line. And if I came out of route, that would all be edited now. Let's say that we want to actually overfly these power lines instead in route alpha. So again, let's go route. Let's go add. Let's choose the point. We want hazard 07, enter. That's my currently selected point, and then we choose which one we want it to appear before. We want it to appear before waypoint... Wait, is it before or after? Let's find out. I'm going to click 6. Yeah, that is how it works. You click the one you want it to appear before. So now waypoint 6 appears after WL07 or hazard 7, and you can see that that point 7 is now in that route. So we can come out of that now. Nice and simple. What if we wanted to create a brand new route? Let's say I want to create a route that's going to go from waypoints 1 to 5 to 4. Let's go route, let's go RTM, let's choose a new route, choose Bravo, and let's come out of RTM. You can see we now have Bravo, and this time let's do it with the cursor because that might be quicker and easier. Let's click add, move the cursor over 1, press cursor enter, and then press end. That will insert it at the beginning. Now let's go to 5, press enter, press end. Let's put it over waypoint 4, let's press enter, let's press end. We now have a flight plan that goes 1, 5, 4. And we can unbox add, and that's us finished editing this particular route. Now if we go back into RTM, we can see we now have these two routes. I've got Alpha and I've got Bravo. I could flip back to Alpha and come out of RTM. There's Alpha. Go back into here, choose Bravo, come out of RTM. We now have route Bravo. Like I said before, these routes are really flight plan segments. They're not actually full flight plans. So let's come out of the route mode, and that's all worked nicely. Okay, lastly I'll demonstrate the creation of control measures and targets. These are the last kind of points that we can deal with in the TSD. So yes, let's go ahead and decide what we want to create here first. If we go into points and we click abbreviations, I want to kind of have a point where I can warn myself about enemy armor. We can see that we have a code here for a control measure, an enemy control measure, called armor enemy, and that's code alpha echo. So let's come out of abbreviations and let's say add. Let's say that we want a control measure, and we can choose ident at the top to pre-fill the ident. So let's go alpha echo, press enter. We can then enter free text. Let's say T72, enter, and then we can give a position. Now, as I've shown before, we could enter the coordinates if we have them. Alternatively, we can actually use the cursor. So I happen to know that there's something here. I can press cursor enter at this location. It's going to ask me for the altitude. I can confirm the altitude on the keyboard, press enter, and that's now done. Now note that we can't see anything right now. If I come out of points and I hide my cursor, that's because we're in the nav phase. If I flip to attack phase, we should then be able to see those items. Alternatively, I can leave it in nav phase, click show, and I can say that I want other types of point to actually show. So if I say threat show, I want threats and targets. No, they're not showing up. Is it coordinates show? Control measures is boxed. Oh, there it is. There's C52. Enemy units. There it is. Okay, so we have to be in show, coordinates show, and enemy units. You can also have planned targets and threats here as well. If you look at the abbreviations, you'll see that that's also a thing that you can see. So let's come out of show. We're now seeing the T-72 in the nav phase. I don't have it in the attack phase, but I could also edit the attack phase and show these kind of pre-planned kind of enemy unit locations as well. But we have it in the nav phase, so we would know to stay away from this, I guess. And then if we actually wanted, if we had something we actually wanted to attack, again, let's take a look at points and abbreviations. If we look at pre-planned targets and threats, these are really just air defense units. You're not really going to store anything else using this mechanism. You also have target reference points, which are just TG. So let's create something. Let's create something that is a SAM site. Let's create an SA8 here. So that's simply short code 8, nice and simple. We'll come out of abbreviations. We're going to say add target, and we're going to change the ident. We're going to enter number 8. Press enter. Free text. We're just going to do SA8. Enter. And then we want the lat long. Again, I'm just going to place this using the cursor. You'd probably use more accurate locations. Press enter here. I'm going to accept that altitude using the keyboard unit, and that's now created. Again, we're not going to see that right now, simply because we're in nav phase, but if I flip to attack phase, by default you do see these units in the attack phase. So that's looking nice. If I go into show, I can actually show, should be able to show threat rings as well, if I remember correctly. Threats, there we go. So if I come out of the show mode, we've now enabled the threat ring for that unit as well. Now keep in mind that this doesn't take into account terrain, so this is a kind of maximum threat ring for you there. And I could come back into nav mode, that's no longer shown. So yeah, you have these two presets for what is shown. And that's how you create target points. And probably something that you would tend to use this for, if it's a pre-planned target, you're probably going to want to use it as an acquisition source. We're not going to go into too much detail on that, but I could click cursor acquisition, move my cursor over the SA8, press cursor enter. You'll see that T07 is now my acquisition source, and I would now get queuing information to that in the helmet mounted display. We now have the dashed cross showing us the location of that particular pre-planned target. And that's pretty much everything when it comes to target points and routes and so on in the TSD. One last thing that you might want to be able to do is use the ADF. So if I go into instruments, this has a timer, which is kind of a fairly standard thing you would use when you're flying, but it can also display ADF information on this HSI. If I go to util while I'm in instrument, you'll see that I have a control button here for ADF. We need to power the ADF on. Once we do that, you see that we have a bunch of presets around the outside of the display, showing the 3-letter identifier, but also the frequency in kilohertz for a particular ADF station. I want to tune Ramat David, which I know is on 368. If I look around here, we do actually have it, RMD. I can click it and immediately tune that, and then come out of util. We now have Ramat David tuned, or at least we should do. Why is that not working? Let's try that again. Util, Ramat David. Nope, doesn't seem to be tuning. Interesting. Let's try entering the ID here. So let's enter RMD. Press enter. Did that do anything? No, we're still not tuned. Let's come out of utility and simply tune it manually. I can click freak on the left hand side and I can enter 368, enter to do a manual tune. And there we go, that's now actually working. I don't know why the presets weren't working there. So you can see RMD, the Morse code, and 368. Note that the other controls don't currently work, so like listening to the tone and listening to the ident is currently not implemented. You can manually enter a frequency, you can flip-flop back to the last frequency, which is kind of handy, and then you're going to get this HSI needle, which is going to show you a direction to that tuned station. And if I come out of instrument, you lose it, so you need to leave the system in instrument mode in order to be able to navigate using that. And the last feature that you have in instrument mode is that you can set the heading bug. So I could set a heading bug of 150, enter, and you'll note that the heading bug jumped around to here to 150. And that's pretty much it. So those are the absolute basics of making use of navigational features of the Apache in DCS. I hope you all enjoyed that, and I'll see you all next time.